I know that voice. Who is that?
The case that rocked a small town, grabbed national headlines, and had millions downloading the hit podcast Down the Hill.
I'm Andrew Iden, one of the hosts of this podcast.
And I am Barbara McDonald.
The blockbuster podcast comes to television. This is Down the Hill, the Delphi murders.
In February of 2017, two teenage girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were savagely murdered. Harrowing images and sound that were caught on Libby's phone show a chilling encounter with their likely killer on an abandoned railroad bridge in Delphi, Indiana. As the weeks passed, the killer remained unidentified, even though his image was widely shared.
So let's show this picture again.
We know what he was wearing, his posture and his mannerisms.
Maybe it's the right hand in his pocket. Someone knows who this individual is.
We've even heard the sound of his voice. Thousands of tips have poured in. Authorities have clues and information they are not sharing with the public. As more and more time passes, locals and the media will grow frustrated and turn up the heat on law enforcement for their decision to keep so tight-lipped about what they know.
There is a wall of secrecy, though, that I felt when I was there.
They do know way more than we know. They'll say that they have the DNA.
And I'm surprised I haven't heard more about the DNA.
It seemed like this was a slam dunk for investigators. How often does a murder victim leave images and the voice of the killer behind for police?
I'm sure viewers are thinking, why don't they release more information? People going, come on, if you know, why don't you tell us?
It seems like there's a lot more evidence that they could provide the public without jeopardizing the case.
Some felt investigators should be releasing more of the recording. There were questions as to whether there were more audible moments on the clip, or perhaps even moving images. No answers were coming from police.
It left me wanting to know more. Like, what else did he say? There has to be more audio.
Would you want to see that video?
Absolutely. Not that I want to, but it's more of I feel like a necessity.
I asked Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lesenby, how long is the recording?
Can you comment?
I really don't want to comment.
And the video evidence wasn't the only detail of the case that police were keeping sealed.
What about cause of death?
That's another piece of the bigger picture that we want to keep a hold of for now.
It seemed like police were keeping mum on nearly every aspect of the evidence they had collected, leaving some to wonder if they had much evidence at all.
Is it fair to say there is a lot of physical evidence in this case?
I'm going to say there's a lot of evidence. I know there was at least 4 different crime scene technicians working that, and they worked it for almost 4 full days.
So the lack of information given to the public was a conscious choice by investigators. But why would they do that? Jeff Reinick, former FBI special agent specializing in crimes against children, gave us some insight.
Well, in my opinion, the person who is in charge of the investigation is constantly walking a tightrope between wanting to reveal information and get help from people that might have information and not wanting to reveal information that only the offender will know that he did. And it's critically important to keep those things confidential. And by doing that, when they do have a suspect, and if the suspect begins to talk, knowing those confidential things would be a way of determining if the suspect is the actual suspect.
And in this case, the investigators were working hard behind closed doors. In July of 2017, they felt like they had enough evidence to release a composite sketch of the man who allegedly killed Abby and Libby.
When Abby's mom, Anna, first heard there was a sketch, she told me she had mixed emotions.
I just held my breath. Part of me really hoped that I would know who this was and recognize them and this would all be over. And then the other half of me just prayed to God I didn't, in that weird way of that, you know, if this was somebody here in the community that we knew and this was somebody that was here, it was just going to be so devastating.
When I saw the sketch, it was really interesting to see a face with the body that we had. We knew what he looked like physically, but we didn't know what his face looked like. And so putting a face with it was very eye-opening. It made it really real. And it made it so that there was a person we had to look for rather than a voice that we had to look for.
For the longest time, even if I wasn't in Delphi, I would look at a person and compare them. And it was just like an automatic thing my mind did. It wasn't like I was purposely in a way doing it.
What is that like walking around town looking at people?
Oh, that was terrible. It didn't matter where you went, you were looking. I made so many people feel uncomfortable.
We were at a stoplight one time, and the person felt us staring so hard.
And I just kept staring and staring. And he's looking around and he notices I'm staring him down. And I felt so bad for him, but I couldn't stop.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem staring at somebody. I know it's rude. It's not something we're supposed to do in our world, but I have no problem staring at somebody. It's just part of it. It's just, I can't, it's within me now. I gotta look.
You feel like you're staring down everybody, and then any weird feeling you get can just turn your whole day. But to nearly give yourself a panic attack or an anxiety attack due to it is just another kick in the face. And in the gut. It's hard.
As people became obsessed with searching for the mysterious bridge guy, droves of tips began pouring into police hotlines. It seemed every middle-aged man in Carroll County was on someone's list of possible perpetrators.
Your husband was even looked at some point, right?
Yeah. Him and his friends, the police officer that came to the house, he was very professional. But he named off these lists of people, and my husband's like, yeah, those are the people I hang out with, but why? I mean, none of us look like the sketch. None of us sound like any of these people.
Even the sheriff of Carroll County himself, Tobe Lesenby, has been called in on the anonymous tip line.
I've been mentioned as a suspect at least 3 times that I know of.
Whether it's a personal issue that someone has against me, or I don't know, where those 3 separate times where that came from.
But the investigators, in doing their jobs, they came to me. And it was, okay, I'll spell it out exactly the way I have before.
In the hunt for clues, investigators need to release more of what was found on Libby's phone. And coming up, that is exactly what they do.
This video has never before been previously released,
sending shockwaves through Delphi and beyond.
She was trying to teach herself to play the keyboard, and she would sit down with the music, and our youngest daughter was playing her guitar, and they would try to play songs that they'd sung at church together. And the last song I can remember her playing, though, is Beauty and the Beast, the theme song from Beauty and the Beast. She was trying to play that.
In the months that followed the release of the sketch, and while many in the community had become obsessed with matching the face of the killer to males in the Delphi area, Libby's grandparents, Becky and Mike Patty, chose to engage in a massive and tireless campaign to get the image in front of as many eyes as they could beyond the streets and farms of Carroll County.
Sent flyers, mailing those things out all over the United States, getting teams of people to put them up at campgrounds and different places. We sent them to every sheriff station in the United States. Get it out there. That's what we were trying to do.
But despite the massive exposure the sketch was getting, both through media and grassroots campaigns, months turned to years. Hope again began to disappear.
I just remember over and over and over, hoping and then just nothing.
But in April 2019, that was all about to change. State investigators said that the case was moving in a new direction and announced an upcoming press conference to be held at the Wabash and Erie Canal Conference and Interpretive Center in Delphi. The press conference was publicized vigorously.
It was different from any other press conference for a crime like this that I had covered before, because they did invite the public. They made a big deal about inviting the public, and they wanted as many people here as possible. It definitely felt big.
Once we got in, we had to sign our name, address, or at least location, city, and while we're there.
So that was an interesting part of the process. You don't normally sign in to something like that unless you're there for the president. But they definitely were taking everyone's name.
Once you were in the room, you know, there was an excitement.
Susan Hendricks was covering the event live for HLN.
We just don't know exactly what's going to be said here. Is this good news? Is this that they have someone in custody? I will tell you, Indiana State Police is guarding that easel behind me, so we're wondering if they're going to unveil something underneath that's of significance.
People felt something big is about to happen, and people were hoping that it was going to be something positive.
Information's being released today is the result of literally thousands and thousands of hours of extraordinary investigative efforts.
The minute he began speaking, you knew this was serious.
After you hear what we're going to release today, I'm going to ask for your continued support.
And the next 10 minutes were definitely going to cause a stir. Superintendent Carter released 2 new significant pieces of evidence.
We are releasing additional portions of the audio recording from that day. Please keep in mind, the person talking is one person and is the person on the bridge with the girls.
Investigators released one more word, guys, which we now hear before the suspect says, down the hill. Carter does not clarify if that's exactly when the new word guys was spoken, or if it happened at a different place in the recording.
And he said, I want you to keep in mind that it's not 2 people speaking on this recording, it's just one.
We are also releasing video recovered from Libby's phone. This video has never before been previously released. The video shows a suspect walking on the bridge. Watch the person's mannerisms as they walk. Do you recognize the mannerisms as being someone that you might know? Remember, he is walking on the former railroad bridge. Because of the deteriorated condition of the bridge, the suspect is not walking naturally due to the spacing between the ties.
Doug Carter said, you know, when you look at the video, you almost don't even look at the face and the head. You look at the body, look at the gait, the way they walk, because we tend to know, you know, friends, family that's close to us, you know, if you cover their face and show them walking, you
would still recognize them.
And after these 2 huge reveals, the presser is just getting started. What Doug Carter announces next will turn the investigation on its head.
It was like a punch in the gut, you know? It was like, are you kidding me?
Superintendent of the Indiana State Police, Doug Carter, had just released 2 brand new bits of media from Libby's phone. But what he was teeing up next was going to stun those watching even more.
During the course of this investigation, we have concluded the first sketch released will become secondary as of today. The result of the new information and intelligence over time leads us to believe the sketch, which you will see shortly, is the person responsible for the murders of these 2 little girls.
The new sketch was what had been concealed on the easel. It reveals a man shockingly younger than the original.
We also believe this person is from Delphi, currently or has previously lived here, visits Delphi on a regular basis, or works here. We believe this person is currently between the age range of 18 and 40, but might appear younger than his true age.
This new revelation makes the assailant as young as 16 at the time of the crime, and completely blindsides those watching.
It was disappointment that we've searched this whole time for one sketch, and now they've released something completely different, and it kind of felt like they're toying with us.
The sketch was a big blow. We did all these flyer campaigns, and we set up everywhere, and we pushed that sketch hard. And when they said, well, we think it's this, it was like a punch in the gut. You know, it was like, are you kidding me?
As those in the room stood dumbfounded by the new direction that this investigation was taking, Carter said something even more alarming.
Directly to the killer, who may be in this room. We believe you are hiding in plain sight.
I'm shaking right now after hearing that. He could be here.
When he said to the killer, who could be in this room right now, what went through your mind?
He's here. I thought, you know, we had to sign in, all of this, you know, leading up, he must be here. And when he said that, everybody kind of paused and they gasped, and we all looked at each other like, you must be Bridge Guy. Everybody in the room at that point was Bridge Guy.
We know that this is about power to you. And you want to know what we know. And one day, you will.
Carter appeared to be almost baiting the killer.
A question to you. What will those closest to you think of? They find out that you brutally murdered 2 little girls. 2 children. Only a coward would do such a thing.
Clearly, you would think Doug Carter's intention in doing that is strategic.
He definitely was trying to get a reaction.
We've talked about killers and a lot of, you know, the different psychologies that they possess. And there's an element of narcissism a lot of times, and a desire to stay connected to the crime, revisit the crime scene, wallow in the aftermath of what happened.
And that attention.
Do you think that was part of the reason for, you know, their direct appeal to him in that room?
They gave this guy every opportunity to get there. If he was going to be there, he had every opportunity to be there. It was a, you know, holiday weekend. Easter was just the day before, and we kind of wondered, was that timing significant? He might very well have been there, or perhaps watching it online.
We are confident that you have told someone what you have done. Or at the very least, they know. Because of how different you are since the murders to the murderer. I believe you have just a little bit of a conscience left. And I can assure you that how you left them in that woods is not what they're experiencing today.
I thought for sure Carter was coming off that stage after somebody. When he ended,
we will not stop.
He walked away from that podium like he owned it. And I thought, oh my gosh, Bridge Guy was dumb enough to show up here. He's gonna go choke somebody out. That's actually what I thought. And everybody just gasped. It was pretty unreal.
But all that said, you know, after all of that activity and that emotion, still nothing.
In the turbulent wake of the New Direction press conference, no arrest is made. But the people of Delphi are forced to wrap their heads around the brand new sketch.
Everybody's trying to figure any reason that this is now going to be a younger sketch. Was somebody else out there? Did they see something different?
I mean, all this together just felt like it completely was back to square one. It wasn't, but it felt like it. We were just moving a different way. It was a hard, confusing time, though.
And now the families were forced to begin the arduous task of publicizing the new image after over 2 years of pushing the old one.
It was frustrating and defeating. I don't know, it just never came back. We're still working on it, but it's still hard to kind of get that push that we used to have.
And with investigators publicizing the younger image, a whole new wave of suspicion and finger-pointing begins.
It seemed to go right back to the initial paranoia of when everything first happened back in February of 2017.
And now, people weren't just looking for a middle-aged man. They were looking for men and boys in high school and college.
A lot of people who I'd went to school with were getting looked at, and that really upset them a lot.
Even some of my friends were getting turned in, and they were saying, "Cause I promise this wasn't me, I didn't do this." Because they were worried that because they got turned in, I would think badly of them, I'm assuming. But I don't. I'm glad that they got turned in and were looked into. I love my friends, but I would turn them in if I thought they did it.
And just ahead, despite the vastly different sketch, Becky Patty sees something on the internet that gives her hope that the investigation is still on track. And a breakthrough revelation by police.
There were some fingerprints collected.
Do you know if those fingerprints belong to the killer?
By April 2019, over 2 years had passed since the day Abigail Williams and Liberty German went for a walk on a warm February day and never came home. Harrowing video caught on Libby's phone shows a chilling encounter with their likely killer on an abandoned railroad bridge in Delphi, Indiana. The world had a rare window into the moment of abduction with the video of the suspected murderer and audio of his voice. But the recording was just obscure enough to allow the man to elude recognition. Investigative efforts led to the release of 2 vastly different police sketches. The first depicted a middle-aged man. Years later,
The sketch
they were committing to a new sketch.
is the person responsible for the murders.
The new sketch that police said was a depiction of the man who killed Abby and Libby was vastly different from the first. And as people were struggling to understand how investigators could be so far off, Libby's grandmother Becky stumbled upon an image on the web that for her brought on an epiphany.
Somebody overlaid the 2 sketches, and that's when it hit me, and I realized they're really not that different. They really aren't. The main features that they tell you to look at anyway were very similar. So then I thought, okay, when I look at people, everybody's young. So if I was an eyewitness, the person probably would look a lot younger. If I was a young person giving that sketch, they think everybody looks older. So it makes sense that if you had 2 different age groups of witnesses, could very definitely give you 2 different sketches like that. But truly, we're still looking for the same features.
By the spring of 2019, the public had at least a handful of leads that might help in identifying the killer. We had 2 sketches. We had 4 words. We had a very short video clip and the still images that could be pulled from that video. I pressed Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lesenby to see if I could extract any more information about other key pieces of evidence that the police might be holding back.
Is there more audio from him on the tape than what's been released?
Not that I am aware of.
Could you release more of the video?
I think people anticipate that there's something, if you will, earth-shattering that's going to jump out at them. They go, hey, it's so-and-so.
That all of you guys watching it every couple of weeks haven't noticed yet.
Right.
I asked him about fingerprints.
There were some fingerprints collected.
Do you know if those fingerprints belong to the killer?
That I do not know.
And same with DNA. You have DNA.
Yes.
Do you have his DNA?
Him, we don't know.
How helpful has that video been?
I know there are still items within that video that are still being studied and considered. And so I still consider it a positive key piece of evidence that eventually will be used in the courtroom.
Is it fair to say it's several minutes long?
It's not as long as what you would think. To say several minutes now.
I also wanted to see if the sheriff would agree that he felt there were so-called signatures left by the perpetrator at the crime scene. But before we go there, let's become familiar with what a signature is. Jeff Reinick is an expert.
When they talk about signatures as it relates to a crime, they're talking about behavior or actions on the part of the offender that might be unique to that offender. I think signatures are very important. The FBI has a database called the Violent Crime Apprehension Program, and it invites local law enforcement to enter their violent cases in there with the intent that local law enforcement would have the opportunity to recognize similar behavior from an offender, let's say across state lines or even across the country. And so when you talk about signatures, that tells me that this offender engaged in behavior that was noteworthy by the investigators or by the crime scene investigators.
The former prosecutor of the case, Robert Ives, told us they existed.
He told us that, in his opinion, there are 2 or 3 signatures left by the killer at the crime scene. Mm-hmm. And you said you agree in part with that?
Mm-hmm. A crime scene will tell you a story. Just stand back and observe, watch, see what it's going to tell you. That's why evidence is important. Once you put all those pieces of evidence together like a huge puzzle, it can tell you that story. And so, yes, I agree with what Prosecutor Ives said, that there's things that existed there at that crime scene that when the day comes, put them all back together and here's the story it's going to tell.
Ahead, inside the mind of a killer. And could this happen again? There is certainly a possibility that the person who murdered Abby and Liberty is still walking the streets, perhaps even the streets of Delphi. We may not know what he looks like, but we wanted to see if we can get a better understanding of the person he is. We contacted Mary Ellen O'Toole, who used to work for the FBI's behavioral analysis team. And though these thoughts are all conjecture, they are born of years of case experience.
This person, based on the way that he walked and the way that he sounded, he seems pretty relaxed. It doesn't seem angry or seem in a rush, and I think that goes to his personality. When an offender commits a crime outdoors, they can't control everything. They can't control who might have seen them, who ran back into the woods. They can't control who saw their car. So it's very high risk for the offender to kill someone outside. So that tells me this is an offender who's very tolerant of high risk. And when you look at a crime like this, where there's predatory behavior involved, and predatory behavior means hunting behavior, hunting for victims, that suggests to me that one of the motives, and maybe the primary motive, was sexual in nature. But of course, we have to keep in mind always that crimes have multiple motivations for them. Thrill and excitement could have been another one. The power and control over two human beings, yet again another one.
What's interesting as well is that motivations can change actually during the scene itself. So if victims react to the offender in a way that he did not anticipate, then his motivation may be different to, okay, now I have to overcome this victim. I have to take back control from this victim.
But I would say right now, based on what I know about this crime, that sex would be a motivation. This person, he takes them to an area around in the woods by the water that really is very remote, which suggests some planning and thinking ahead of time.
O'Toole seems to believe that this offender is a local who is familiar with the bridge.
Sexually sadistic offenders are offenders who pick the location where the crime will occur and then will pick victims of opportunity, so they're not known to the victims.
The offender may have chosen the bridge because, in essence, it is a trap. Once you cross the bridge, you must come back across it, unless you flee through the woods.
When you have someone who's psychopathic, if that's the case, they can do anything they want to their victims, and they feel themselves absolutely no remorse or guilt for what they do. When you have a case like this, or a case that, despite the tremendous effort on the part of the detectives and the law enforcement folks that have been working this, when someone is able to fly under the radar screen for an extended period of time, it's generally because they appear to be so normal and non-threatening. The person just doesn't stand out as somebody that is threatening, that stands out as someone that's scary or creepy. They're very normal in two ways. They're normal in their behavior and they're normal in their lifestyle, meaning that they could have a good job, they could be married, they could have children, and in their everyday life, they appear as normal as you and me. They don't go home or back to work and behave in a real nervous way, in an anxious way. They'll go home and have a hamburger and french fries with their family, for example.
So perhaps the killer laid in wait at the bridge for the right opportunity. Perhaps Abby and Libby were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and they fell into his trap. Perhaps the girls crossed the bridge to the far end. There was no easy escape. The offender calmly boxed them in. Something in his demeanor set off warning bells, and Libby began to covertly record. The perpetrator never knew she was recording or would have stopped her. He took control of the girls, and he forced them down the hill to the creek. He murdered them and possibly escaped into the thick woods. No one saw him arrive or leave, despite the numerous people that were on the trails. So perhaps this was also the way he came. He melded back into society and moved on with his life, as though February 13th, 2017 was just another day. But to the people of Delphi, it was the day. And coming up, frustration builds, and families are left wondering.
I mean, I really thought that it would have been solved a long time ago. I still don't understand why it's not.
Instead, the people of Delphi are left with the one thing they fear the most. Until the day that Bridge Guy is brought to justice, there will always be a sense here in Delphi that he may be walking among them, somewhere, working, dining, living.
Your biggest fear is that he's going to do this to somebody else. That always weighs heavy on us.
The fact of the matter is he murdered once, a double murder, and he's still walking around free. Is he done? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that. I don't know. But I wouldn't take any more chances knowing what I know now, you know.
Are you confident this case will be solved?
I don't know anymore. I thought I was. I mean, I really thought that it would have been solved a long time ago. I still don't understand why it's not, but you know how important it is for the first 48 hours, and here we're talking about 48 months. So, I don't know.
You know, in today's world, I can't understand why we don't have this guy arrested. We've got the audio of a guy. We got a video of the guy.
You think mistakes were made?
Absolutely.
As with any case that goes unsolved, there is a good deal of criticism about how the case was handled by authorities.
I don't know why there weren't dogs out there immediately. That bothers me.
The police had a bloodhound unit coming in from Missouri to help search for the girls. But when the bodies were found, the dogs were turned back.
The one thing we could have potentially maybe had the canines continue, and there could have been other things they could have played a role in, but...
like maybe tracking where he went?
Right, yeah. So, you know, I'm human, and I make mistakes, and I'll continue to make them.
And another thing that angers some observers is the handling of the evidence and the painfully slow trickle of images and sounds released by investigators.
Watch the person's mannerisms as they walk.
Some believe that releasing more earlier would have helped the public to identify the killer.
They said for so long that they couldn't release any more of the pictures or video, but yet was able to release a small clip of the video. So it seems like they're holding back, and some things that they're holding back they may not need to.
There are days of frustration where I feel like marching myself down here and be like, okay, guys, so what are we doing today? Like, what exactly are we doing today?
But despite the frustration, there is still hope that police can and will make progress in the case.
I know it weighs on them just as much as it weighs on us and in the community, because their kids live here, their grandkids live here, their families here.
You can look on their faces and you can tell that this has affected them and they are working.
A lot of the watchers, I guess, of the case feel that the case is cold.
Yeah. In our world, a cold case is one that you have nothing else to work on, basically.
You've run out of avenues.
The trail is wet dry, so to say, and that's not the case.
Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClelland agrees.
It's still a very open case, something that I work on every week, if not every day, and we have full-time investigators that work on it every day. We still have tips coming in and we investigate those tips. We're still doing search warrants, still doing everything you would do in an active case.
I hate waiting. I hate it. But if that's what it takes to get a sure conviction, then I'm willing to wait.
Somebody out there knows something. Even if they just think it's a hunch, yeah, he kind of sounds like that or he kind of looks like that, but old Joe, he'd never do anything like that. Let the investigators figure it out. That's what they do. That's their job.
There's somebody out there who it is, and when I see them, I won't have to force the sketch. I won't have to force the picture. It's kind of like it just fits perfectly with who it is.
There won't be any kind of, you'll just know.
Yeah, I feel like I will.
But until that moment happens, and as Delphi moves through the years in limbo, the murder weighs heavy on its residents.
How is Delphi different today?
People lock their doors. People probably aren't as trusting. We were a rural, small town. It brought us into the bigger world.
And I've kind of just seen how bad of a world this is and how scary of a place it is to live. And so with what happened to Abby and Libby, and on top of that, I try not to live my life in fear, but it's always the look around your shoulder and be aware of your surroundings. It'll never be the same. I mean, if you Google search Delphi, that's the first thing that pops up. So that'll always be, Delphi will always be labeled with this. And whether we make good of it or bad of it defines who we are.
Abby and Libby would be seniors this year and getting ready to begin their lives as adults.
Graduation's going to be tough. Of course, there's no dances, no proms, no anything for us. No planning for college. All those things were taken.
I do live every day for them and in memory of them, but as the years go by, it's like they're a big memory to me, but slowly, they're a distant memory.
As the years pass and the memories fade, there will always be a call for justice here in Delphi.
We're going to keep at it. I still believe in justice, and I still believe in good winning over evil.
I have nothing to do but hope and pray and believe that they're on the right track. I believe they'll get their answer.
I'm not going to give up. Something's going to turn,
We can't give up hope. The girls didn't give up hope. I think they tried, they fought till the bitter end, and we should do the same for them.
A reward is being offered for any information leading to the arrest. If you think you know this suspect or have a tip, please call 1-844-459-5786 or email the Carroll County Sheriff's Office.